Smith under center, two receivers to the top of the screen, play action to Honey. Pressure coming, Smith steps up, now going to throw. This ball looking for Katoa. What a reception made by Zach Katoa to the 25-yard line. Good coverage on the play, but Katoa just went up and got it.
Welcoming Deseret News Rewind, Dusty Litster and Dane Stewart, as always, presented by Cavemen and Associates and brought to you by the Utah Army National Guard.
That's right, Dusty. And for those of you that might have any legal needs coming up around the corner, maybe you have something you're dealing with right now, or maybe you're just trying to prepare for your future, give Cavemen and Associates a call. It's a full-service law firm with locations down in southern Utah, all along the Wasatch Front. We've used them, Dusty. Couldn't recommend them any more highly. Give them a call, 801-754-4240, or learn more at utah.law.
Not to get too personal, I always talk about my relationship with Justin. Dane can now speak to working with Justin and how great it is and what a outstanding person he's been at his law firm as well. So, yeah, you're absolutely. Go support Cavemen Associates. And also, during this time, if you've been thinking of maybe getting into a new line of work or go after a new career, but also worry about the cost of go into that and what it would mean to not have a paycheck for a little bit while you're doing that, well, there's a way to do it without having to go through that pain, and that's through the National Guard. Over 160 job training opportunities through the National Guard. Also get up to $20,000 in a signing bonus. That would certainly help get through the gap and a change of career as well. And not only that, this service to give to the country as well. Go to nationalguard.com to learn more and want to thank the Utah Army National Guard and Cavemen Associates for their support of Deseret News Rewind. Got some new people will be coming on soon as well as we get close to football season. Speaking of football season, if you haven't watched our interview with Rob Cuff, go check that out, talking about fall coming back. And in light of that, we decided we get you primed and ready with some old school classics that we did here on High School Rewind.
Yeah, that's right. And we got a good one, Dusty. Oh, man, I love doing the classics. We've been in basketball mode because we just haven't quite been able to let go of winter sports. But it's the middle of July. It's time for us to embrace fall sports. Everybody wear your masks so we can have them. But we've got a doozy from 2014. And, man, I was there. It was a fun night. This night out in Herriman.
Absolutely. Let's get into this one. AF at Herriman, a big one at the Big H. Mentioned it. You were at this one, American Fork. This was, AF had been pretty good for a number of years. They were kind of milling. This was the team for American Fork. We'll talk about where they finished the year, but it really took off. And this was a really good Herriman team. You mentioned here the number one defense in the state of Utah that year.
Yeah, I remember this American Fork offense, Dusty. And you had Smith at quarterback, right? You had Katoa out of the backfield. You also had Nate Honey, who was one of our favorite players. It felt like they had so many options on offense. And then you talk about that Herriman team and how good their defense had been. This is what Coach Pierce had built at Herriman. And, their offense, hey, they actually played really well in this ball game. But this is a story of defenses, in particular in the second half, had some really fantastic, phenomenal defensive plays that were really big in this game turning out the way that it did.
Pleased to be joined by the head coach of the American Fork Cavemen, Coach Aaron Behm. Coach, before we get into this game specifically, how important was this 2014 team to you in what's now been an outstanding run at American Fork?
Yeah, this was just a great group of kids, and we had kind of followed this group of kids since, I think I went to their 8th grade championship game and, whatever year that would have been, and knew that this was a pretty special group of kids, and we had some other good classes around them. And so we were hoping to do something special in 2014. Felt like we had the right mix of players, right mix of coaches, and it turned out to be a great one.
Well, and let's talk about this game in particular. Herriman, we now know more of Herriman, but this 2014 is kind of where we talk about in this video that we feel like they kind of turned a corner because the next year they win a state championship. But what we've always known is that they're very physical. Always hard-nosed. Dustin Pierce is just going to try to run the ball down your throat and then throw the ball over the top when he gets a chance. What was your memory getting ready for this Herriman team?
First of all, we had beaten Lone Peak. I think it was just the week before, and certainly
He scored 50
hoping
points.
not to have a letdown. That was a game, the first time that I had beat Lone Peak since being here, and so that was a really big deal. And right away, we had to bounce back and get ready for this Herriman game. And so just trying to keep our kids focused. And I remember somebody asking me right before the game and saying, this is the game for the region championship. Well, we still had 3 weeks, I think, left of region play. But, we both knew we were some of the top teams in the region at that time, and that this could, very well determine where we get seated in the playoffs, where you run into Bingham in the playoffs. So it was definitely a big win for both of us, or a big game for both of us.
First of all, AF came into this game having routed Lone Peak. They played really good football that year. And I mean, again, we talk about the build-up to it. But you talk about Nate Honey, Nick Katoa, Zach Lopini Katoa. Remember, in high school, folks, you're going to hear this. He was Zach Katoa, and he wouldn't go by Lopini. But you think of him, Scotty Hughes, Nate Heaps, a big tight end, get some big plays late in this game, went 2 ways. And then not only that, James Empey. Young man could be finding his way to go play on Sundays here pretty soon. This AF team was absolutely loaded.
Yeah, they were. We even had some trickeration in this game. I mean, we talked about Tanner Smith and how good he was, Dusty. Well, how about this? He only threw 1 of the 3 passing touchdowns from American Fork in this game. So you had all sorts of different chess pieces, and hey, we're going to just not throw the playbook out, but we're going to get a little creative on this night, because this Herriman defense, I mean, you talk about players, they were that good, and you had to do something to try to take advantage of what was a really feisty, tenacious defense. You had Noah Vea that was roaming the field, Khaleesi Moley.
No fly zone, Noah Vea.
It was so good, this Herriman defense, that AF had to do something creative, and boy, we had our share of a little bit of everything.
Absolutely. Well, right from the get-go, I mean, this is one of these games, if you went and cheated and saw the final score, you'd be a little surprised, because, I mean, there were fireworks early on, and it started with the first Brig, the original Brig, not Brigham, Brig Rush. He came opening kickoff, taking that into the house, 96 yards.
Herriman is going to be Brig Rush, looking up the right side, gets through the first line of tacklers, now has some space as he's off another blocker, and now out in the open. He's going to take this one to the house. 20, 10, touchdown, Herriman. Oh, man, could not draw that up any better. A 94-yard return for Brig Rush. And the Herriman Mustangs score just 17 seconds into the ball game.
It was one of those where it was like, oh boy, all right, fasten up, right? I mean, you get the opening kickoff return, you just get the sense that you're going to be in for a great game. It was a great return, beautiful blocks along the way, and Rush with a 95-yard return, and Herriman looking good early.
Well, and right after that, a quick response, or the opening kickoff response, and American Fork comes right back. Mike Empey was the offensive coordinator for AF in this season, and later was the offensive line coach at BYU and everything else. They had him looking. You've got to see what Katoa was. Here's Katoa's final line. He had 39 yards rushing on 13 attempts. He had 78 yards receiving, and we'll show in a little bit. He also threw the ball some too. So this drive showed what Zach Katoa was to this team.
Yeah, he really showed everything that is in his tool set on this drive. And I mean, if you're American Fork, we talked about the options that they had on this offense. And I mean, make no mistake about it, Katoa was the guy, right? Didn't put up a ton of yards rushing in the ball game, but the majority of them came on a big run from him on this first drive. Had a couple of really nice catches, including the touchdown to even things up.
So actually no gain on the carry. We nearly had a false start penalty. Smith has a man back corner of the end zone. That's where it's thrown. Touchdown, American Fork. Vea tried to get a hand on the ball, just couldn't quite get there. And it's Zach Katoa. Had some huge runs on that drive, catching the 15-yard touchdown pass as the Cavemen look to tie things up.
So tied at 7. Little interesting teams. I feel like all night. I mean, Vince Francis would say, hey, what should we title this one? We try to come up with fun titles. And my thing is the haymakers at Herriman. I mean, both these teams going forward on fourth downs. There weren't going to be punts. There'd be trick plays galore in this one. But it was the defenses in short yardage situations that seemed to come up big time after time in the middle of this ball game.
Kenner going to look to throw, and he's going to get sacked. Boy, what a play made. Gavin Williams just burst through that offensive line and took Kenner down for the sack, and boy did he. A vicious throwdown, loss of 6 on the play, and Herriman will have to punt this ball away.
Yeah, I mean, you have a punt, Dusty, and it ends up ricocheting off of an AF player. Herriman recovers. I mean, you feel like, hey, here's a bit of a momentum, right? We're at home. And, that was off of their first offensive possession because they had, returned the opening kick. And, boy, offense coming back out on the field. You have a key 4th down stop by that AF defense. And, I mean, it was just one of those where defenses were called upon, talked about in the open, called upon to make big plays. You talk about the haymakers that they were throwing. And, boy, that AF defense did a really nice job having to come back out on the field after just making a stop.
4th down. Strasser's the back. Instead, it's Kenner. And I don't know if he got it. Based on that spot, I think he might be short. American Fork thinks they held him.
Well, then they couldn't hold up. Another 4th down turnover, and then it was Braden Kenner. I know we both had to go through this pain because it looks like Keener, but Kenner, 59-yard touchdown pass to Cody Jarvis. Herriman still, to this day, does not throw the ball much, but when they do, they're going for the juggler.
On 3rd down, again, Keener in the shotgun, 10 yards to go. They have to get to the 49-yard line for the first. Blitz coming. Keener is hit. Jarvis is wide open, caught, and they're not going to catch him. Touchdown, Herriman on 3rd and 10. Cody Jarvis gets behind everyone. A 59-yard touchdown pass from Keener. And the Mustangs retake the lead with under a minute to play here in the first.
Boy, and Kenner gets absolutely hit hard on this play, too. I mean, this is an impressive throw. You talked about it. Herriman doesn't throw very much, but this one from Kenner, beautiful throw, able to put Herriman back up on the board here, 14-7.
And then, as you expect, we go into this. I mean, go in the second quarter. Both teams kind of miss opportunities. And Dane, in this moment, you had all this stuff. Did it just feel like to you all of a sudden that it was being the first team to 17? Because the defenses just seemed to come up big in the middle of this ball game.
Dusty, let's be honest. I don't know if 17's a reality at this point. I mean, the thing that surprised me was how many times we saw teams going for it on 4th down. I mean, as a fan of the game, sometimes you think, gosh, it's 4th and a yard. Can we just run the ball? Can we not gain 1 yard? And I'll tell you, I mean, these two coaches were playing like it was a state championship game because every 4th down, it felt like they're going for it. We just didn't see a lot of punts in this ball game. And, I mean, you talk about defenses coming up big, and you talked about it. I mean, in this one, you get some creativity from Herriman trying one. AF comes up with a nice stop. And, man, it was just one of those where it felt like it was just not a traditional game. It just felt like something was different for whatever reason where the coaches were willing to roll the dice a little more.
4th down. Play action thrown out. Now pitch. Boy, what a play. American Fork had that one sniffed out. Nowhere to go as the Mustangs will turn it over on downs.
Well, I knew it was going to be hard. Points are going to be a premium late in the first half. And we're a very positive show, okay? But we also like to be a little realistic too. Late in the first half, AF has a chance to tie the game up. Tanner Smith puts a ball right on the money and just could not – I mean, I don't like to call out names. Just could not pull it in. And I still, even to this day, feel bad. This young man's in his mid-20s, but I still don't want to say shame him at all because he just could not – I mean, the ball is right on the mark.
Yeah. It's certainly one that I'm sure created some nightmares, but those nightmares were maybe quelled a little bit because he ends up having a really nice play later in the ball game on an interception that he creates. But, I mean, this is one where if you're Tanner Smith, you can't throw a better ball, right? Man's wide open, just doesn't finish the play. And, then the very next throw, what do you have? Interception.
Boy, missed opportunity for American Fork. 2nd down, Smith to throw. That ball's intercepted. All sorts of space for Noah Vaya. He's running and brought down inside the 30. He nearly fumbled that as Smith went for the legs. Getting the tackle was Colson Worley, who came all the way back to bring him down.
And all of a sudden, you see some turnovers here late in the first half. Noah Vaya coming up with the pick to stall the drive for AF. 7 points left on the field.
Well, not only that, it just left things open too because Herriman gets that interception from Vea. They do not turn it into points. And then right before the end of the half, we go to the Super Bowl and we talk about lots of things. Folks, 2014, in the year of 2014, it wasn't the Philly special. It was the Caveman special. We went back. We reverted back. The Neanderthals were the ones who were forward thinking and go to the pitch, reverse, and Tanner Smith wide open for the touchdown.
First down on the ground, reverse play, throwing back to Smith, wide open, touchdown for American Fork. What a beautiful play, as it was Worley who ended up getting the reverse. It was sold wonderfully, and Smith ran his route wide open as American Fork, with 19 seconds left, looks to knot things up at Herriman.
When you're watching the Super Bowl and you see the Eagles run a variation of this play at the shotgun, did you go, hey, we already had that? Like, that's not rocket science. We already do it.
Yeah, I remember that play. Yeah, I actually think I was trying to remember and actually texting some of our coaches. I didn't text Coach Empey yet, but I think he called that play wet squirrel is what he called it. And for whatever reason, I don't know where that came from. But it worked, and Colson had a guy right in his face, and thankfully got the ball up and over to Tanner, who was super wide open, and he caught that. Tanner was a good athlete. So yeah, it was pretty fun to run that 4 years ago and then see it become a big thing here in the NFL in the last couple of years.
Let's go to the third quarter, 14-14. And you saw this AF offense. You start to see it get in the mold of what it does. I mean, Colson Worley making catches. Heaps has a grab. And then a little more trickery. You think you're just going to go with a little power to the right? Nope. Zach Katoa with the jump pass, looking like Tim Tebow. Little jump pass to Nate Heaps for a touchdown to put AF up.
And now the jump pass. How about that? As Katoa gets in on the throwing action, finding the tight end Nate Heaps right over the middle. Katoa showing he's like a Swiss Army knife, a man of many talents.
Yeah. When you're getting ready for that week, I mean, how often did you work on, I mean, it was just look like a blast. He's running like a blast to the right, and he just jumps up a little jump pass over the top to Nate Heaps. How often did you work on those plays, and how long were you waiting to go with those?
Peony actually threw another touchdown in week 5, I think, against Riverton on a little toss, and he threw the touchdown. So we had a couple little plays drawn up for him to throw the ball. And I think Coach Empey, our offensive coordinator, knew that Herriman's at their best in the red zone, down inside the 10, where they can really jam things together. And, we can run some of our normal base offense, but it's going to be really, really tough. And so, he had those wrinkles ready to go. And I think when he called that play from the press box, I said, "Are we sure? We like that one?" And as it's in the air, he's like, "I'm sure, Coach. I'm sure." And so that was a lot of fun.
And it's interesting because I remember you going to these games at Herriman. It seemed like you got to be the one. You went to Herriman more than I did. I went like once during this era, and I remember you telling me, "Hey, this Kenner kid can do some things. He could throw the football." Because remember, he was a young quarterback at this point. Well, the next drive trying to make it to answer, and you just see how slim things were going to be in this one. A double pass for a touchdown. And even looking back on it now, I mean, it's close, but brings back a touchdown because, well, no, it was a forward pass.
Under a minute to play. Ball thrown to Jarvis. Now a double pass. Touchdown, Herriman. Oh, man. Some trickeration by American Fork. They raised the stakes as it looked like a screen to Jarvis, and then he found Tomasi Tonga in the end zone for the touchdown, though there is a penalty flag that will have to be sorted out.
Certainly close, and the officials there on the line of scrimmage make the call. But
backwards. This is the Music City Miracle thing. You could show me so many angles, and I think you could argue. I'm watching it right now. I'm like scrubbing it back and forth just because I'm like, wait, do I really believe there was a forward pass? Because normally I give, we're close to officials now, and I give them I'm not going to go back and adjudicate things 6 years later, but
we don't want to go back to 20.
I actually think it might be backwards.
I don't know.
I thought it was backwards. We looked at it. Folks, this is what's fun. Even in post, we're going to do stuff. We get a hold, we review in the name of Heidemann and Associates, reviewed our case. Dane, what's your findings?
You know what, Dusty, I don't want to go back to 2014. That's hard, man. I mean, you look at that angle, and after watching it again, because I watched this, I'm not going to lie. We've had these highlights for a couple days now, and I watched it, put together my notes. We just went and watched it again, and looking at it, that's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. From the angle of our camera, I don't know. That is hard.
Go check out our friends at Heidemann Associates. If you just don't know how to make a good call, make this good call. Call Justin Heidemann and let him help you out, because I think it was a backward pass. So what ends up happening was right after that is Kenner goes to the end zone, and our young man, I'll let you do the name, Dane, because you called it. Young man that dropped the touchdown catch early in the game gets the interception in the same end zone.
Pass, it would have been a touchdown, but they ruled an ineligible forward pass. So they said the first one was basically the forward pass and therefore nullifying the second. So now 4th down and 8 going down the middle. That ball's intercepted by American Fork in the end zone. And how about that? Ben Cummings. We mentioned one that went through his hands earlier. That is a major atonement right there as he picks it off.
Yeah, how about Ben Cummings? We talked about drops that touchdown pass a little bit earlier. Herriman with an opportunity here to come back, tie the game. We're in the 3rd. He comes up with a big interception. And, you just go back. And this is one of the games that I think maybe helped me get to this point where, look, it all evens out, right? You have a missed touchdown opportunity for AF. Next plays an interception. Quarter later, missed touchdown opportunity for Herriman. Interception. Now, I know things don't always work that cleanly out, but really, like, you just see perfect negation here on both sides, and it all evens out.
And isn't it amazing that it does? Because it's just one of those things, you feel snake bitten, you feel all these different things, but then you know that I don't know, it just always comes back. If you just keep going, it always comes back. So late 4th quarter, AF's offense, as powerful as it's been, just could not overcome this Herriman defense time after time. And then Kenner, late in the 4th quarter, like he always does, off a play action, throws it in the double coverage. I mean, this ball goes where the only place it can go. And Dane, if I mess up, then I'm going to be really mad. Jalen Rapp, I believe, is the one that came down with this one.
American Fork showing blitz. Again, it comes. Gonna throw. Down the middle of the field, has a man, and that catch is made. Oh, what a grab in double coverage by Jalen Overite, the man who recovered the Jarvis fumble just a few plays ago. A huge reception, and now Herriman with the ball in the red zone.
When you play Herriman, because they run the ball so much, you know that play action pass is going to come. And the Kenner kid, and he proved it again the next year, I mean, he threw a terrific deep ball when he needed to. How much you sitting there, like you watch the 4th, 5th straight run, or you like, hey, safeties, you got to stay in the box. Was it frustrating for you? It was just like, this is just what you're going to get with Herriman when you'd see that happen.
Yeah, you kind of know what you're going to get. And on the other side of the ball, we were extremely fortunate. John Lehman, the head coach at Skyridge, was our defensive coordinator that year. And, he had – for the most part, we had shut them down in a lot of different ways because they didn't give up that opening kickoff, so to hold them to 14 points throughout 4 quarters was a fantastic job. And, sometimes when a team's really good at running the ball, play action stuff's going to happen. And they got that one on us. But, yeah, certainly, especially I think it was 3rd and long, maybe not, but I think it was a 3rd and down kind of where you're expecting to pass. But still, they'll run the ball on 3rd and long and get it. So, something you talk about, something you prepare for all week, but sometimes the other team just makes a play.
All of a sudden, Herriman in business trying to tie things up.
Clock down to 35 seconds as Keener under center on 2nd and goal. Play action to throw, back in the end zone, touchdown! Mustangs, Josh McMillan. Found along that back line of the end zone. A dangerous play. McMillan was wide open though. And now Herriman with a chance to tie it up or take the lead with 30 seconds left.
And just like that, we are tied at 21 all. And AF's going to have a chance. And Nadald comes out 51 yards out.
Will try to give AF a win with a 51-yard field goal. Has a little wind at his back. The kick is up. No, it doesn't have the distance. It's short. It was right on. It looked like it had the distance, and then it seemingly just had the air fall out from under it. Regulation has expired. Folks, free football coming your way.
When you were getting ready to go to overtime, what was your mindset at that point? Because they get the ball first. What is that like going into a game like this where points have been at a premium? You've had your opportunities, but now heading into a 25-yard field.
So again, that's really where they're good, right? When they're able to close things down and you've got a short field and there's less space for your offense to work. On the other side, we felt really confident in our place kicker. felt like even if we don't get a yard here, we can get 3 points on the board. And so when they went out and had to go offense first, we were able to get a stop there. That gave us a lot of confidence heading into our offensive possession.
Hit Lupini on a little swing pass. He gets inside the 10-yard line, setting up Nadald, who had missed the field goal before, but 51 yards, high school, unless your name's Justin Sorensen or some of these other guys in the last few years. That's a tall task. You knew the game when it was over at that point. Did you have all that confidence? Hey, this is done. We're gonna walk out of here.
I had a lot of confidence. You always want to have confidence in your kids. And the one before regulation was actually a different kicker, a kid with a bigger leg, not as accurate. I think it was Tanner Lee. We knew he could boot it and we'd have a shot, and maybe it would go in. And I think it was down the middle, just a couple yards short. So then Jackson comes overtime. He had beat himself up over a missed field goal in that game 1 against Brighton where we lost by a point. It was a far field goal. It was wet. It was freezing. Not ideal kicking situations, but he had kind of left that in the back of his mind as he worked through the rest of the year. His dad, Justin Nadald, is our kicking coach. And maybe my favorite memory of that is Justin's not even able to look. You can see him on film. He's down on a knee looking the other way, and then just goes absolutely bonkers when Jackson nailed it. And we had a good time giving Justin a hard time. He's running all over the field like a crazy man after that field goal went in.
For the win. The kick is up. And it's good. The American Fork Cavemen in overtime, as crutches go flying in the air, have defeated the Herriman Mustangs at Herriman 24-21.
The crutches go flying. How about that?
Yep. Never knew crutches had wings. I got to apologize. We show up to games and sometimes we're trying to grab rosters and sometimes we're able to grab those ahead of time. And it was one of those where American Fork, I apologize, had a bad roster. Clearly it was Nadal with the kick here. And so it was one where, hey, all you needed to do was to send it through the upright. Nadal did, and American Fork able to come back and grab an impressive overtime win over the Herriman Mustangs.
Dan, what moment of this game stands out to you? When you look back on this, because you're there, obviously I've been having mine just going back. What's the moment that you kind of go back to when we brought up doing this game?
I don't know if there's one moment for me. I think it's kind of the storyline of the game in entirety, right? You have this AF offense that this year would have all sorts of success. And yet against a Herriman team, they had 3 different players throw a touchdown, right? Their quarterback caught as many touchdown passes as he threw. It was just such a different game. We talked about how many times these two offenses went for it on 4th down. It was just such a unique game, something that you don't see very often, where it felt like the coaches were really interested in winning on that particular night. And I don't know why. I don't know what was different about that night than week 6 or week 8 in 2019. But for whatever reason, the coaches on this night in 2014 were much more aggressive. I thought it was a blast to be there. It was fun to go back and rewatch it and see just how often coaches were taking gambles in this one, and really made it for a really fun atmosphere. And probably why you saw the celebration that you did from AF, just because there was such a focus on doing what you have to do to win on this particular night.
Here's the interesting thing about this team. They opened the year at against Brighton and lose 24-23. And it's like, oh, how good is this team going to be? And then they roll off wins, beat Logan, beat Orem, beat Riverton, beat Westlake, rout Lone Peak, beat Herriman in overtime. They run away from Lehigh, pound PG. They lose to Eastside Catholic in Washington 20-13. But then they get to the playoffs, and then I got to go on this run. I did every one of these games. Hillcrest, who won a playing game, they beat them 42-13. They end Austin Confence's run at Jordan 58-13. Then they beat Brighton to avenge that loss in the semifinals, 58-28. And then, amazingly, they get to the championship game, Bingham, just show how good Bingham was, 20-3.
Yeah, both these teams have their seasons come to an end at the hand of the Bingham Miners, and that can be said for a majority of the 20 teams, right? that was the run of Bingham.
But 06 through 2017, yeah.
But you talk about just how good this AF team was, and I'm glad you mentioned those scores, because we talked about, just putting up 24 points against this Herriman team and how good that Herriman defense really was. that they were able to lock down this AF team to just 24 points. Scored 23 in a loss against Brighton, only had 13 in a loss to an out-of-state team from Washington, only 3 against Bingham. Other than that, they were putting points on the scoreboard left and right, just dominating offensively. And for me, this was the game that kind of opened my eyes to AF football, where I think you started to see what this program has grown into over the last 6 years, right? Where we are now more accustomed to seeing them put up yards, put up points. And, we've seen an evolution of an offense there a little bit as well. But, man, all of a sudden, I feel like this year was really, for me at least, when AF finally came on the board and was like, okay, this is now a team that is going to be in the mix. And we've seen that in recent years. And in my mind, it all goes back to this 2014 squad.
How important was this team to laying down that foundation to where now it's I don't want to say an expectation, but really an expectable goal to get to Rice-Eccles Stadium year in and year out?
I think it's huge. You need that class who really sets the bar, sets the example that this is what it takes to get there. And, good is okay, but we need to be great. And, those examples I mentioned earlier, staying after practice to get extra work done, being accountable when you do make a mistake, bringing the guys around you up to another level. And I think, those have been guys, even now here in 2020, those are names that kids see on TV, kids watch, they see their name up in the weight room, and they saw what they were willing to do to get the team there in 2014. And that makes all these other kids a little bit more willing to put in that extra work to help us get back there.
Well, Coach, we appreciate your time. Thanks for jumping on with this. Hopefully luckily for you, it's a really good memory. And so what was it?
Really,
one of my
really fun watching the highlights that you guys sent over and kind of reliving. And I had to go back and rethink through some things, and that was a lot of fun. So thanks for doing these.
Dane, your pick of looking back on it now, I know who you picked then. Who's your player of the game?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's Zach Katoa. I think what he brings on this particular night, the versatility in the offense. You think about the plays he made, the moments he made them, really critical for AF to win this ball game. So for me, it's I'm not even going to call him a running back, the all-purpose Zach Katoa on this night in 2014.
Dan, I know it's hard to go back, 6 years ago, whatever, but who is your Utah Army National Guard unsung hero of this one?
Oh, man, there's a couple guys in my mind at least, and I feel kind of bad because they didn't get a ton of time in our highlights, but I'm going to go with I'm going to pick 2 guys, actually. All right? Is that okay? Can we have unsung heroes?
Of course.
Yeah. National Guard's all about teamwork, right? So we're going to go with 2 on my list. One, I'm going to go with Nate Heaps. Was an absolute beast in the receiving corps, 8 receptions, 95 yards, had a touchdown, had a really, really great game. The other guy I'm going to go with is Nate Honey. He just had a pair of receptions, but he led the team in tackles as well. Multi-way player. Nate Heaps also had double-digit tackles in this one for that AF defense. But in my mind, Honey, Heaps, they are my Utah Army National Guard unsung heroes.
This just get me ready. Folks, let's do everything we can to make sure that we have a football season. So whatever it is that you could do, it's just being smart and making sure that we help bring the numbers down, allowing fall sports to happen. That's what you do. Dan, your final thoughts here.
Well, man, so excited to be able to see football again. Oh, man, it feels so right, doesn't it? And we hopefully have live games coming up here in just a few weeks. Can't wait to bring the 2020 season to you all year long. And we'll have a couple more of these classics. And if there's any game that you remember that you're like, oh, man, that was a doozy, you guys were there, reach out to us on Twitter. Let us know at Deseret News Rewind, at Dusty Litster, at Dane_Stewart. We'll go back in the archives, pull the footage out, and bring you a classic edition of your favorite school or player. But, man, so fun to be able to go relive these, fun to be able to relive in those moments, those environments, what it was like to catch up with former players, coaches. It's been real fun and awesome we were able to bring this classic to you from 2014.
Absolutely. Folks, we're just 4 Fridays away. 4 Fridays away from getting the football. And it's a Thursday night. It's going to be kicking off on the 13th. Let's do everything we can to make sure this happens. We all have a part in it, and let's play that part as well. For Vince Francis and Dane Stewart joining us and watching Deseret News Rewind on Deseret.com.